Dermott presiding.
Please be seated. Good morning and Happy New Year. As presiding judge of the Lake Circuit Court, I want to warmly welcome all of you to the Lake County Bar Association's annual Honors and Necrology Memorial Service. It is the tradition of this Bar Association to take some time at the beginning of each new year to look back at the past year and remember those who we have lost. The 11 gentlemen that we honor today represent varying generations. Many were blessed to serve out long careers. Others were lost before their time. But they all represented the proud tradition of civility and professionalism for which this legal community is known. Before we begin the memorials, I want to thank and recognize the leadership of the Lake County Bar Association with us today. The current president, Adam Cedia, and also the incoming president, Stephen Sursick. Also, I would be remiss if I did not thank Executive Director Deborah Wright and Office Administrator Teresa Ridgway for their hard work in planning this event every year. And finally, thank you to today's court reporter for her assistance in preserving this ceremony for posterity. Thank you very much. I will now call upon the Honorable T. Edward Page to proceed with the service.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This becomes a special occasion in a number of ways. First, it's the first time that our new president has an opportunity to address you. This is traditionally his or her first official service. And for that purpose, I'd like to now introduce our current new president, Stephen Sursick.
Judge McDermott, members of the bar, honored family and friends, we gather today to begin our professional year. Together, as a community, as one. We gather today to honor and remember, celebrate gifted, caring, accomplished friends and loved ones. Whether reflecting on the dedication and consummate professionalism of a caring and brilliant jurist, compassion and caring in action every day of fine advocates or counselors, or memories of a moment of humor, gentleness, or fellowship of any of the friends on this list of honor. This is a morning for remembering and celebrating our friends and colleagues as a community. So, before we honor and celebrate them, each and every one with our words, please join me in a moment of silence to honor all of these individuals who, Tool 1, as our mission as an association states, have elevated the standard of integrity, courtesy, and honor in this our cherished legal profession. I'll now turn the ceremony back to our Master of Ceremonies, Honorable Taylor.
Memento mori. Remember death. It's an ancient expression, and while it sounds like a sad one, it actually is an expression that means that we not only remember that death comes for us all, and that all of us brothers and sisters, our names will sometime be on this list, but it's also to remember the importance of life. I look at this list and I see that I know every name. That I see those with whom I have tried cases, those with whom I have tried cases against, those in front of whom I have tried cases. I see fellow scouts. I see fellow officers from the Bar Association. I see a young officer of the Bar Association who had great promise. I see mentors. I see those for whom I looked up to all of my career, such as C.J. Smith. Many ask, why do we do this on the first day of the new year? Some have suggested because we're supposed to do it on the last day of the year, but being lawyers, we delay it. But the fact of the matter is, we do it in the new year because the new year is a time of renewal. It is a time in which we don't look back, but we look forward. And one of the best ways for all of us as lawyers here in this room to look forward is to remember those whom we lost in this last year. Take their wonderful careers as an example of how we should conduct ourselves in the year to come. May it please the Court. I will ask at the end of these proceedings that the record of these proceedings be made permanent part of the Court's record so that the memory of all of these individuals may be preserved not only in our hearts, but in the records of this Court. Each of the eulogists for those who have been able to come are special friends of those who have passed this last year. As is custom, we follow a chronological order, and for that purpose, I would like to introduce the Honorable Thomas Stefaniak to eulogize my good friend and fellow scout, Glenn Cummins.
Good morning, all. The Honorable Glenn D. Cummins, known by those that knew him well as Glenn. Glenn was an intelligent, persistent, thorough, hardworking, and caring individual who did a wonderful job looking out for the best interests of children of Lake County. I did not have enough or a great deal of time to spend with him. We had a mutual respect for each other from afar, but I did have the opportunity to work with him for a very meaningful time. And I had the chance to watch him as he suffered with his illness, never give up, and always do the job that he was hired for, even when I thought he shouldn't be there. I'd watch him trudge up the back stairs at juvenile court because the elevator was on the other side, and I'd say, Glenn, you don't look like you're feeling very well today. Why don't you go home? And he'd say, I've got work to do. That was the guy that he was. Till the very end, no matter how bad he felt, he put the best interest of children above his own interest many times. I can only hope, many of us can only hope to have the reputation and the dedication that he had. I didn't have a very long time to work with him to be able to share his hobbies of golf and motorcycling with him, but he sure liked to talk about his Harley and the Lansing Country Club. And certainly I got a chance to see a true professional, a true gentleman, and a great man in action. He will be missed. He is missed.
Thank you, Judge. And so you know, a special mention of Glenn is being made in the magazine of the National Eagle Scout Association in memory of Glenn, who was an Eagle Scout. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mark Vanderbilt.
The irony of coming together and speaking of the things that we know of and appreciate about Rick Lauder is that he was such a humble man. I could imagine if he were here, he would be saying, "Mark, don't be talking about me." He would be uncomfortable with this ceremony, actually. And he would say, if you have to do it, keep it short. So I will, but I will want to point out certain aspects and characteristics of Mr. Lauder. I had the privilege of sharing office space with him for 18 years. He opened the door to me when I struck out on my own in 1997, and we shared that time together until he retired due to his declining health in 2016. But some of those things, if you will know, he was admitted to the bar in 1983. He had a general practice that his concentration was in creditors' rights. And those that knew him knew that he was very giving of his time. He became very proficient in this area of the law. And I would overhear him on the phone, long conversations, which I could tell he was speaking with counsel. And I would assume by the end of that conversation, that would last for an hour, that he was engaged in some long discussion with opposing counsel about some upcoming case. And I would say, how did that conversation go? And he would explain to me that actually that was not some opposing counsel. It was him again fielding a call from a colleague, asking him advice about a difficult case. And this was something that Rick was always known for. He was a go-to guy. People could contact him, and he would give it his time. He was also very charitable. In his time, he served for a number of years, 25 years, as a board member on Impact. He also provided them legal counsel. He provided other charitable organizations free legal counsel. He did so many of these things behind the scenes. He did this for pro bono clients, indigent clients. His concern was for the underdog all the time. He loved life. He loved his sports. He loved going to the Bulls games. He loved traveling with his wife and his children. And that was something that he always had a good time talking about, going and watching his beloved Bulls in Chicago. I would see him cut out of the office early, and I pretty much figured I knew where he was going if I knew the Bulls were playing. And his concern always was for others. He did not view the law as something as just a means by which he could make a good living, which he did, and provide for others, which he did. But he always had that concern in his practice for others. And even in the last year of his life, last couple of years of his practice, as you watched him struggle, as his pulmonary condition became worse and worse, you would ask him how he's doing. And he would quickly, tell you, "I'm doing fine," as you knew he was struggling. And yet he would immediately turn the attention to asking you, "Mark, how are your boys doing? How's the one in Iowa? How's the one in Michigan?" Always turn the attention away from himself. And the thing that I really was struck by is at his memorial service of it almost a year ago in February, that looking at the number of people that testified and seeing the number of people that he had touched, even though I was with him all of this time, he did not realize how many people's lives he touched behind the scenes. And to see that coming forth at that service is a remarkable testament to, sometimes it's not the flashy service that you see or the big headline activity that is going on. It is the daily activity of his care for clients, for the underdog, and using his skills for them, and to see the number of lives that he touched. But if you were to ask him, his main legacy is not necessarily the legal profession, but it was his marriage with his wife, Wanda, and seeing his children, Ryan and Marissa, grow and become successful in their fields. That, to him, was his greatest legacy and his greatest joy of life. So he was certainly a credit to the legal profession, but he was also a credit to basic humanity and caring for others. And I certainly count it a privilege to have known him all of those years.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we remember a past vice president of the Lake County Bar Association, William Clyde Jones. And for that, I'd like to call upon Kenny.
Many of you knew him professionally as attorney William Clyde Jones. Some of you knew him as Cool Clyde. But to me, he was Uncle Clyde. He was born on April 17, 1947. Remember the date because I'll bring it back to you. To the son of late Ed and Mary Jones in Butler, Alabama, which is also where I grew up. My grandparents were blessed with 14 children. He was the third of the 14. There was never a single. There was never a single. There was always a single. No twins, no triplets, no quadruplets. I used to tease my grandmother all the time and said that she was every woman, and that she would be blessed for bearing so many children. Through that, he learned discipline, love, compassion, competition. Of course, with 13 other siblings, you couldn't help but to be competitive. He imparted everything he learned as an attorney to his friends. He was a mentor to me. He was a mentor to me. He's the reason why I went to law school. I remember when he was studying the pastoral bar. He eventually did that. He had some challenges, and I subsequently had some challenges some years later. He talked to me about it. He said, "Don't give up. Don't give up. You'll get to the other side. You'll finish this." And I had to remember that because he finished his. He got his job at legal aid, and Dan, the senior who used to work with him there, he said he was so excited about it and so proud. And we were all so proud at that time because he was the first to finish college. He was also the first lawyer in the family. I remember my father saying, "Hey, we got a lawyer in the family, we got a lawyer in the family." It's a proud moment for all of us. His experiences at legal aid were exciting and rewarding. And that's when he began his conversation with me when I was 12 years old to say, "Why don't you think about going to law school?" I emphatically told him no. I didn't want to be a lawyer. That's just not what I wanted to do. He stayed on me, he stayed on me, he stayed on me, he persisted. And it was through his work in legal aid that prompted me to say, "Let me take another look at this." And he eventually won in his persistence. He talked to me about going to Upgrades of school of law. I didn't do that because I went to IU in Indianapolis. And in 2010, I passed the bar and became an attorney. And it was a proud moment for him because it was something that we had discussed so many years ago. And that was a bond that we had. So always when people ask me, "Why did you become a lawyer?" I said, "My uncle. He made it sound so cool. He made it sound so rewarding." And I thank him for that. Now, he changed his mind about the practice law a little bit, as all lawyers do. it comes with the practice. I remember him being a handsome fellow. He's a little conceited too. He's gotta be handsome. Intelligent, charismatic, funny, sarcastic, and of course cool. He was that uncle that we all, he was unofficially the favorite uncle. We couldn't really come out and say he was the favorite uncle because he had 7 other brothers that were competing as well. But he was that uncle that you could come and talk to about anything. Particularly for me, it was about my career path. It was also when my parents divorced. He was the one that I talked to about that. And I appreciate all of the conversations, all of the wisdom that he imparted to me about being an attorney. He was also a devoted son, a devoted husband, a devoted father, a devoted uncle, a devoted grandfather. He lost his wife in April 1997, the same year, 2007, the same year I would lose my father. And I remember when he courted her, it was so interesting to watch, because I also remember my uncle's big line back in the day too. He was quite a character. He was quite a character. But when he courted her, I was like, this woman's for real. This is the one. And there she was married and had 3 children, and we had a daughter from previous relationship to stay with. Antoine, William, and Ryan. They were his hearts. In 2014, he, actually that was like in 2012, he was diagnosed with COPD, and I don't ever remember my uncle ever being sick. He was always busy, always active, always in the community. He had been the attorney for the Erie County Council. He had also been an attorney for the Lake County as well. And I just always remember him being busy. And so when he became ill in 2014, he summoned me to the hospital and said, I need you to take care of some things for me. And the sight that I saw, many of you, he wasn't a large man, but when I saw him that day, he had lost so much weight, and I almost didn't recognize him. And I said, son, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you, he said, quit. I said, quit what? He said, I quit. I said, oh. And for years he had been talking about retiring, and so I want you to come work with me. And I said, oh, listen, you keep talking about retirement, but you never said a date. It's elusive. And so he said, no, he said, this time I'm really good. And so I got my cousin, attorney Angela Jones, and Attorney Gillis, and we started gathering, getting his practice together, figuring what cases he had, and that I really got to know him a lot more in the type of cases that he took. He was an underdog attorney, so he was always fighting for people. And then, lo and behold, he got better and came out of retirement in 2015 and started practicing. And I happened to see him in court. I said, I thought you were done. He said, no, I'm still there. I'm going to do a few things here and there. And he hung in there as long as he could. And in 2016, he really, at that time, well, didn't really say that I was retired, but I started getting phone calls from his clients and say, hey, he told me, you were going to help finish this case. But we hadn't even talked about that. That's okay. That's fine. I'll went to see him, and we went through all of his cases. And his date, he never officially retired, but his date of service and practice of law would end on February 11, 2017. I finished up his last case this past summer. It was an honor to be able to help him when he needed me. because he helped me figure out who I was supposed to be. It's still difficult for me to talk about it because he was such a uncle. He was that uncle that was always there for me. So I'm grateful for his foresight about my career, having his wisdom as a mentor. He's sorely missed by family, friends, and colleagues.
It's special, of course, when you can hear from family who also happen to be colleagues. But the next lawyer, Donald L. Gray, we're fortunate enough to have here today his family and to be remembered by his son, Donald L. Gray, Jr.
Good morning. This is totally impromptu. It's on the voice. I'll just kind of summarize Dad's career. He was always from Indiana, born and raised here. Had his practice in Whiting. Put himself through actually the Delco Law School at U.S. Steel. Worked many terms over there. Was fortunate to come into a practice with Joe Sullivan in Whiting and set up shop there. Really stayed there almost his entire career. Did many things for family, president of Little League, all the typical dad things. I'm trying to remember pro bono stuff, Woodmar Child Daycare Center, helped found many different things. But what he really enjoyed was the private practice, and he served under 2 mayors, city attorney Whiting for many years, Nimmo, I'm trying to remember the state president for a certain term. So he really enjoyed his work. He never did retire. It was literally, he was in the hospital, signed his last 2 court cases over in the bed. He just wanted to stay active. I think he lived in room 2 Superior Court for a long time. That was always the thing he wanted to do. He really was a World War II buff and enjoyed going out to do stuff. I think we did a lot of family travel together. I think a couple things I remember the most was finally being able to take him up flying. He always wanted to fly. We were doing a lot of stuff in World War II aircraft, barrel rolls, that kind of stuff. So we got into it. And this was when he was 85. So he was active right to the end. Let me say it was not unexpected, but things happened very quickly at the end. We kind of knew what was going on, but it all worked out well. He took it well. He prepared. I would like to say I always want to keep things short. I'm going to try to do the same thing. I want to thank the Bar Association for the opportunity to come here and do this. I never envisioned being in front of Your Honor. Standing here, hopefully it's the last time I'm in a courtroom. It may turn out that his granddaughter goes on to the law school. That may be the thing. I didn't take the calling. I went off and became an engineer. So we'll just see. I was always disappointed. Then after he kind of started liquidating the practice, then it's like, other than granddaughter wants to be in the thing. So we shall see. But I think he enjoyed his time. He just enjoyed the association, particularly the Whiting Bar, the local ones. So I mean, thank you all for this opportunity. And have a good year. Okay.
You were just as nervous as if you were facing the judge. Just as Attorney Gray was one of our senior members, we unfortunately lost a member of our board of directors this last year, well before his time. And you remember him, for those of you who did not know him, for those of you who did. I'd like to introduce Adam C. at Convention.
May it please the court, Judge McDermott, President Sergey. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about Brent August Koringa. You may know that this is a tough one, and I'm going to have to break Brent's story up a little bit so that we aren't left with just the sad part. My name is Ben Fryman. I met Brent in 2002. I was his best man in 2015, and I was law partners with Brent for the past 6 years. Brent was born in Munster, Indiana on March 3rd, 1980. On the evening of March 27, 2017, Brent took his own life. Bishop Don Hine conducted Brent's funeral mass himself on April 1st and said that none of us will understand where Brent was in that dark moment, or why he did that. But while his death holds a lot of mystery for so many of us, we do know a lot about his life, and it was a pretty good one. Surviving Brent are his beautiful wife, Natalia, and 2 adorable daughters, Tiffany and Victoria. Yesterday would have been Brent and Natalia's 3rd wedding anniversary. Tiffany is 2 years old. Brent loved her. I remember watching him show Tiffany how to pluck out melodies on the piano. His daughter Victoria was born this past August 2nd. They live in Dyer. They're all healthy and beautiful, and they visit him often. Like his father and his grandfather, Brent was a pilot, and he was a good one. He got his pilot's license at age 15. He loved to fly friends on tours of the area. After Meigs Field was destroyed, the air traffic over downtown Chicago was no longer controlled airspace, aside from occasional temporary flight restrictions. So he loved to fly friends up the coast of Lake Michigan, past Navy Pier, and over the Chicago skyline. Brent did his flight training at Griffith Airport, so that's where we would usually meet to fly somewhere. Brent's dad, Gary, once told me a story about how he had secretly parked there to watch on the day of Brent's first solo flight in 1995. I could tell you hours of stories about flying with Brent. He was careful, he was meticulous, and he was precise. There were more than a few times that I told him his pre-flight checks took too long, but that didn't matter. All my complaining couldn't make him skip a step. But when you got in any kind of situation that could make you nervous in the air, Brent was calm. He was the best pilot I knew. Brent brought a lot of joy into the lives of the people who knew him. He was full of knowledge. He graduated middle school from Our Lady of Grace and then Highland High School in 1998. He earned his bachelor's degree from Valparaiso University in engineering in 2002 and worked for his family's engineering firm until he decided to go to law school in 2006. Brent graduated from Valparaiso University School of Law in 2009 and was sworn in as an Indian attorney on October 16, 2009. Bob Schwerd, Brent, and I opened our firm Schwerd, Fryman, Torngat on January 1st, 2011. Before that, Brent was working as an engineer and handling cases here and there. His condo was just blocks from the Highland firm where Bob and I worked at the time. We would occasionally advise him on cases over a glass of whiskey in his kitchen. Brent hated whiskey, but he drank it with us anyway. That's where, in December of 2010, we came up with the crazy idea to start the firm where we would practice together for just over 6 years. Brent understood the importance of involvement in the Bar Association. He was a member from the time he passed the bar. And in 2013, Brent served as chair of the Young Lawyers section, where he carried on the successful activities of the section, including law day presentations, welcome to the practice party for those who are sworn in, and bridging the gap CLE seminar for newly admitted attorneys. He was a member of the Calumet chapter of the American Inns of Court and tried to never miss a meeting. Word to miss a meal might be more accurate to say. Brent's practice was largely built around his engineering and surveying background, so we often joked in the office that Brent liked to read legal descriptions in his leisure time, and he could decipher a multiple-page, nonsensical legal description in no time. But the advice he offered most often was quite simple. Water always runs downhill, he would say. There were more than a few times he was surprised that some clients just don't understand the interaction between water and gravity. Brent made a friend out of nearly anyone he met. It became more clear after he passed, and we started to meet with his clients. Without fail, they each told us how they considered him a friend. Many of them were hurt to think that he may have been suffering without sharing that pain. But it turns out that's often how it is when we struggle with issues in our minds. It was the same with lawyers. They called him a friend. Brent and I often talked about how so many lawyers practiced for many decades. Our own partner, Bob, despite his young looks, is in his 5th decade as a lawyer. You don't see this in many professions. You don't see the professionals in the county getting together to remember the ones they've lost in the past year. I think the public would be shocked to see how much we care. I cannot count the number of calls I've gotten from lawyers around the county and the state about Brent over the past 9 months. It's amazing that in less than 8 years of practice, Brent had so many other lawyers who cared about him. I wish he knew that. That would have meant a lot to him. This can be a tough job sometimes. Perhaps we should all take a moment to appreciate each other. I think it would be a great way to honor all of the ones we've lost, and especially Brent August Kornga, Indian lawyer in good standing. He was a good lawyer and a good friend. We will miss him.
I'd like to share a few words about Brent too. I haven't known him as long as Ben did. We met when we were studying for the bar in 2009. I had gone to law school out of state and come in, and we met sitting next to each other at the bar review course. And immediately became friends. And what drew me to Brent was his sense of humor, which was also one of the reasons why when I received the news of his death, it was one of the most shocking things I've ever come to learn. I never would have guessed he was struggling with any interviews because he was always nonchalant and had such a wonderful, wry sense of humor. To give you an example, he described one lady. He said, "I remember her name was Crystal because her middle name should have been Beth." That's the kind of humor. His engineering background showed through clearly. He had this multiple gallon huge saltwater fish tank that until he met Natalia was pretty much his wife. And he had imported rocks from Tonga to build in there and had all sorts of expensive creatures living in there. And he had wired his controls to his iPhone so that when he visited his in-laws in Ukraine, he could control its salinity and pH from the engineer coming through. He also was fond of cooking, but he didn't believe in recipes, and I was a guinea pig for many of them. There were times when he would give me food and I would ask him for the recipe, and he'd say, "I don't know, just put it together." And then there were other times where I could tell him, just put it together. But after he went, I wrote a poem to encapsulate my thoughts about it, and I hope this rings true for all of us who have lost our friends and colleagues in the past year. It's called The Void. Now you are gone, where once you walked, now gates will knit before negation of you, though all else remains until the void. The weft whence you were torn yet holds the form where you should fit. I glance, but then remember, I'm facing still the void. If what has been is everything, and time's blind course has run, I must resign myself to bear for good or ill the void. Nothing but you will fit there. I must hope for your return. And all my colors match will not suffice to fill the void.
We also remember today Michael Cherry, and for that I'm calling for that.
First, let me start off by saying Michael Cherry was a very dear friend of my wife and myself for quite some time. Michael lived pretty much a private life, and not too many people knew too much, or even the dealings they had with him through the prosecutor's office. Few people would know that the trial rules that Michael could recite them word for word from front to back. If you told him the rule number, or he could not only tell you the trial rule word for word, he could tell you what page it was on. He had that kind of memory. When going through Michael's stuff after his demise, a letter was found in the men's room. And in 2011, they sent Michael Cherry a letter that he had the third highest IQ in the United States. I always asked Mike, I said, Mike, it seems like to me you're underemployed. Being a prosecutor. And as a matter of fact, I told him that come work at my office anytime he wanted to. And he said, do you offer insurance? I said, no. He said, forget it. That was the end of the discussion. Mike would come to my house and enjoy supper with my wife Annie, and we would go to sci-fi movies. Believe it or not, I hate sci-fi movies, but Mike loved them. So my wife Annie, who speaks very little English, would understand very little of the movie. I speak perfect English and didn't understand anything. But what we would do afterwards is we would go out to have a cup of coffee, and then Mike would explain what we'd just seen. And by then, I had started to not really enjoy the movie, but I enjoyed Mike's dissertation of the movie. Mike was also one of the world's experts, believe it or not, on comic books. There was a comic convention every year that Mike Senator took his vacation for, and he, although he would never dress up like a lot of people would, but he always sat on the panel because they would have this comic trivia contest, which paid big dividends and paid big money. And Mike was always one of the judges. And the thing that made Mike unique was Mike viewed comic books from the first till the modern day time, knew their value, knew who published them, and knew a lot of the text. With his incredible memory, it made it very difficult to try cases against him because he didn't need a court reporter. He knew every single word that your witness said. And I had the pleasure of trying 2 cases against Mike. One, lost one. And when I won the one, I was in front of Judge Lawler. And he walked up and said, your witness lied. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Are you accusing me of suborning perjury? He said, no, I wouldn't accuse you of that, but your witness lied. I said, are you going to go to the movies Friday with Annie and I? He said, I'm going to have to stay away from you for a while. I said, okay, but some of you know, so you've been there every year. I have a picnic at my house on the second Sunday in August. Pretty much invite everybody. And I have between 300 to 700 people. And my wife and I do all the cooking. And Mike, Mike was a gourmet chef with a degree in that. Mike had degrees in everything. And he would come and he would assist us in cooking. And the guy could have been one of those Dinsu people on TV who was so quick with the knife and whatever else like that. But being quick with a knife's not uncommon for East Chicago. But anyway, Mike would come and cook every year. And then equals to my wife and I finally, and that this was no, but finally referred to Mike as a Big Mike. And it's very difficult to picnic every year now because Mike's not there. And to borrow a section from a poem, I could write this, but I'm going to insert Mike's name, that Mike lived unknown, and few could know when Mike ceased to be. But Mike's in his grave now, and oh, the difference to me. Thank you.
another one before his time.
Yes, sir. Way before.
His sense of humor was such, I think you would have appreciated it. I don't think it was so many years ago, but Judge Stefaniak and Judge Seeley, you may remember at the Judges Conference, it also overlapped at the Convention Center with the Comic-Con conference that was taking place. And he would have been quite amused watching all these judges as they intertwine themselves among these Star Wars characters and people with Jedi swords. Is there anyone here from the Lyons family? Or any lawyer who is particularly close to him that would like to speak of John? John's been eulogized before, but if I could take an opportunity to do so. I can't remember how many years I've been in practice, but for the last 17 years I've been in private practice. And one of the first lawyers I ever had occasion to deal with was John Lyons. And he and I immediately hit it off. And I think it was because of two things. The attention to detail, which we both loved, and the fact he was Irish, and nothing was sacred. Those of you who knew John would know that he smiled a lot and laughed a lot, and had that mischievous little twinkle in his eye. And that is what I remember most about him. He was born back in 1933, a tough time. And an especially tough time for him and his family because his father had passed away several months before John was even born. So he was raised by a widow during the Depression. But he did have occasion to go on. He determined he was going to have a career in law. He went to Marquette and then eventually to Valparaiso, where he became a lawyer almost exactly at the same time my former, the late lead partner, Nick Theros, did. And so, in dealing with him in cases, the few that we had together, he made it enjoyable because you knew he knew what he was doing, he was precise, and he's one of those lawyers that would really count on in practice that when that other lawyer tells you something about the case, you don't have to go back and double check it. The lawyer, when they tell you that this is so or that was so, if they're not completely sure, they'll qualify it. And if they are sure, they'll tell you, I saw that, and you could count on it absolutely. And John Lyons was one of those persons. He was a member of the Bar Association here. He was a member in practice in Porter County, and he was a member of the Inns of Court in Porter County. For those of you not familiar with the Inns of Court, it is a society dedicated to professionalism and civility in the practice. And if there's one person who especially exemplified that, it was John Lyons. We now come to remember someone who I knew socially, and who was a special honoree by the Boy Scouts, and who was always fun, especially when I ran into him at the Country Lounge, and that's Jim Holcomb. And to remember Jim, the precipitousness.
May it please the court. I was called and asked to give a eulogy for Jim Holcomb, and I said, of course, he had a lot of associates in his law firm, and why would they do it? And I was told that they were tied up, and that I could talk about things Jim Holcomb did, and all of the things he and I did. Well, there's no way I'm going to tell about all the things Jim Holcomb and I did on camera. We were friends beginning in our late 20s, and our 30s, 40s, and 50s. We engaged in the usual cabaret, and went on into our 60s and 70s. So we were pals for a long time. We hunted big game in the Dakotas, Wyoming, Colorado, and wild boar in West Virginia, using pistols. Of course, I was a better shot than he was, but he was a very good athlete, and I don't know if you're aware of this, he organized a lawyers basketball team which played in tournaments in the area, including teams from Valparaiso University. He came from a very tough upbringing. His helping hand came by going in the Army during the Korean War. He didn't get overseas, but he was able to take advantage of the GI Bill, which got him to be a lawyer. He graduated from the University of Michigan in 1961 and hired in with the law firm of Lucas and Clifford. His office was across the street from mine, and we became pretty good pals, probably because of our interest in hunting and other male pursuits at that time, before sexual harassment was so risky. Anyway, he was an extremely competent attorney, and in a few years became a partner in that firm, so it was Lucas, Polk, and Clifford. He found out, he was a pretty charitable guy, he found out I was giving turkeys to a church in Gary around Christmas time. The church days were feeding homeless people, and he showed up in my office with 25 more turkeys to help out. I don't know how he found out about it, but anyway, he did, and that's the kind of guy he was. Wasn't the only charitable impulse he had, because one night after closing up the patio, we went to High-Def Saloon, and he asked to see a $100 bill from me. Well, he got it and bought the house of drink. At least I got the change. But he got the credit. I have to say one thing about him, though. He was a student of the law. You recognize that at times the law didn't achieve justice. He paraphrased Winston Churchill in that we have the worst legal system in the world except for all the other ones. So he went into more formal organizations. It was a life fellow of the American Bar Association and the Indiana Bar Foundation. He served as president of the Indiana Bar Association, as secretary, vice chairman, and chairman of the Young Lawyers section. In 1966, he formed the Legal Aid Society of Gary. I didn't know that. At one time or another, he served as Gary City Attorney, Park Board Attorney, Public Transportation Attorney, and he served in each office in the Gary Bar Association. He started Lake County Community Correction Program, appointed by various governors to the Indiana Natural Resources Foundation, Indiana Heritage Trust, and was instrumental in forming the Munster Community Hospital. He incorporated the cerebral palsy of Northwest Indiana. They have a facility in New Chicago. They take in about 30 kids that they take care of, and Jim served on his board of directors, not just incorporating. He raised many thousands of dollars for that cerebral palsy through the Humpty Hollow Athletic Association. That's a group of businessmen and self-appointed big shots that have tongue-in-cheek lunches every month. But they raise a lot of money. This past December, they raised about $30,000 for cerebral palsy. So that was James Holcomb. So Jim Holcomb, 1934 to 2017, kind of a hard act to follow. Time he died.
Thank you. We now go on to remember another lawyer who served for a very long time, who's being remembered by his friend Harold.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of our ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to help remember Clement After whose name all of us knew, Stick. Stick was a lawyer who earned his living as a banker. Stick built in Hammond, and he went to St. Casimir School, Campion, which is a boarding school in Wisconsin, Georgetown University, and then Indiana University Law School. I became a friend of Stiff's when he got out of law school and came back to him in, I think it was 1968 or 1969. He then went to work for American Savings Loan, which was a small savings loan. His father was and had been president for many, many years. The first office, the original office, American Savings Loan, was on Homan Avenue, directly adjacent to the South Shore tracks in him. And that family lived upstairs. And Skip came to work at the bank. His father was the president, as I said. And about 10 years later, Skip became the president of the bank, and I started representing the bank. And I'm pleased to say our firm is still representing that bank, which is now American Community Bank of Indiana. Skip was active in Georgetown University Board of Admissions. I remember in the mid-'80s, I don't remember exactly what year, Patrick Ewing played for Georgetown. He won the NCAA. Skip followed him. He was a lifetime White Sox fan. Obviously very happy when they won the World Series in 2005. My wife Phyllis and I had many vacations shared with Skip and his family in the Cayman Islands. Skip and his family had a timeshare there. And there were a number of years when, for whatever reason, at the time of the year, they were unable to use the timeshare, and graciously made it available to our family, and we certainly enjoyed that. Skip was very conscientious with regard to the continuing legal education requirements, and particularly for those of you, some of you will remember, there was a period of time when continuing legal education was conducted or available in a resort atmosphere in various locations, including Mexico, and there were a limited number of people who were able to sign up and attend. And I assure you, Skip was very, very conscientious in making sure that his reservation was in early, so that he made the cut, so to speak. As the president of the bank, for many, many years, the bank was a member of an organization called the United States League of Saving Institutions, which had conventions and meetings throughout the country, and we were pleased to attend a number of those all over the U.S., including Hawaii. And also, periodically, they would have attorney conferences which dealt with legal matters. And Skip was very, very instrumental in arranging, or seeing to it, I should say, that the U.S. League met the requirements so that the lawyers who attended those conferences would get continuing legal education. And prior to that time, I don't think anyone ever presented it. And they followed through and did what they had to do, so that those of us who attended those attorney conferences on legal issues, relating, of course, to bank matters, could get continuing legal education credits. One of Skip's favorite restaurants was called Giovanni's in Munster. And Skip's middle name is Bernard. And some years ago, Skip, the chef, created a special dish called Veal Bernard. And it's never been on the menu because I think they want to keep it exclusive for those who are so-called insiders. And if you go to Giovanni's today and order Veal Bernard, I think they will take care of you. On a lighter note, some years ago, we were in Annapolis, Maryland, at a Curtis conference. Skip and his wife Denise is here today, and my wife Phyllis was also here today. And we stayed in a hotel where the conference was held, and we were advised that a couple blocks away, within walking distance, there was a very, very fine country French restaurant. So we went there for dinner, and we ordered an adult beverage and a cocktail with a twist. And pretty soon the server came back, served the cocktails, and said, I'm sorry. The bartender said, we're olive twist. And Skip looked at her and said, if you go in the kitchen and see if there's a lemon, and see if they have a knife, and she looked at him like, okay. And so pretty soon she came to the plate with a lemon and a knife, and Skip carved out a couple of lemon twists. And I think that's the first time I think she ever realized what a lemon twist was. At any rate, Skip was a longtime friend, and under his leadership, when he became the president of the bank, I think it was a $30-some billion state chartered savings and loan association. In the mid-90s, one bank holding company was formed, went public, and today it's American Community Bank, over $2 billion. And when Skip retired as president, he still remained chairman of the board until he passed away. When he retired as president, someone Michael Miller, who's also here today, became the president. And also, I'm happy to see Skip's daughter, Catherine, and Betsy, and I see Mike Long here, and everything very pleased you're here. About 10 years ago, or whatever it was, when Skip retired as president and remained as the chairman of the board, as I said, until he passed away, there was a dinner commemorating his retirement as president. And when the bank became a publicly held company, they hired a Washington D.C. law firm that still represents the bank today. And at that retirement dinner, the Washington Wire referred to Skip as the best known in the industry as occasionally in error, but never in doubt. Remember, personal and professional is worth their medicine. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. Harold is also a charter member of the Calumet American Inn of Court, the organization of which I spoke 2 minutes ago. We now remember somebody that I had the pleasure of knowing not through any cases that we handled together, but through dealings we had within the Bar Association. I would describe him as mild-mannered and soft-spoken, but I would be wrong. My first dealings with Jack Long came when he was on a committee, and he was in fact the first person that picked up a phone and called me and asked if I'd be willing to serve on a committee within the Bar Association, and I learned a lot from him. Also a man of precision and full of ideas. And I can even remember not so many years ago getting a call from out of nowhere with a suggestion from Jack, because that's what he was like. And to remember Jack to you, past president of the Lake County Bar Association, James Weezer.
Morning, Your Honor. Please support Steve. Good morning, everyone. I'm reminded that all of us here as professionals and as lawyers would have a story or a comment about everybody that we've already heard about. I just wanted to say one thing to those that were here with Brent. Brent grew up right across the street from me. He lived directly across the street in Highland. He and my son, my oldest, and Brent were good friends and remain good friends, and I just wanted to share that with you. The other thing is, at the time of Skip's death, I was out of the country. I became a very good friend of Skip's through a third party who was a non-lawyer, smart guy, and Denise and Mike and the whole family. I want to formally express my sympathy. I'll start with Jack real quick. I'm a lawyer. I'm a third-year law student at Valpo. I'm working at the legal aid clinic one night. A young lady comes in with her family, and she's senior at Chesterton High School. She's pregnant, and they expelled her from school for being pregnant. Big case for the Legal Aid Society at Valpo was lost. Those of you that went to Valpo may or may not have known Cy Moskowitz, professor there, who was a pretty passionate guy. And I told him about it the next day. He said, this is the case that's going to put us on the map. We've got to file a lawsuit, and we've got to get ready. And you and another third-year student would handle it, because we could do that under the Supreme Court rule. And we started working. So as we worked on it, Cy said, hey, you have to have a supervising attorney under the rules. What did we know? We were third-year law students. I didn't know what a supervising attorney was, but he says, we've got to get one. We've got to get one of the best. And he said, and Bert Wexler, who's another professor, used to practice law in Gary, he knows everybody in Lake County, and he threw out a couple names. I remember him saying Cy Ruman, I remember him saying Max Cohen, and so we went down to Professor Wexler's office, and for those of you that read the obituary for Jack, a rather extended one, will understand this perfectly. Cy Moskowitz says, we need a supervising lawyer. We need someone that's really going to do the job, that's really going to work with these kids, that's going to make this a great case, that's going to win this case. And I need your recommendation. You know all the lawyers in Lake County. So Professor Wexler sat back, he had a goatee and kind of stroked it, and he said, Jack Lund. And Moskowitz said, who? He says, Jack Lund. And Professor Moskowitz said, well, I've never heard the name, but I trust your judgment, but I have to know, Bert, is he really good? Will he get the job done? Will he really teach these guys? Will he shepherd these guys? Will he really get this done? Is he really a good lawyer? And Wexler looked up at him and said, I don't know. He's a hell of a trombone player. True story. That's how I met Jack Lund. But I want to tell you something, and Ted commented on it. If Jack was anything, he was passionate. And he was passionate in everything he did. Whether it was playing the trombone, whether it was practicing law, whether it was playing pool at the KD Lounge, whether it was golfing, he threw himself into it 100%. So Jack and I liked him. He was eccentric, he was brilliant, and he was different. He was different than people I knew and different than lawyers I knew. So, fortunately, we won the case. She was able to graduate. And we became friends. I started to do some work with him, and I became his law partner. I would always tell him he became my law partner, but I became his law partner. And when we were partners, most of the time that we spent, and it wasn't so much the practice of law, it was life. It was how to live life. And Jack always lived life on the edge, for those of you that knew him. And I was a bit more conservative, not a whole lot, but a bit more conservative than Jack was. But that's how our law practice flourished. And I remember one day, we had a back room and we had a bunch of stuff piled up, and we finally said, we got to clean this place out. So we're cleaning out the back room, and I came across a 1958 or 1959 Playboy magazine. It was just laying. What would this be doing here? And in the magazine, they had a section on music, and it said that the #1 jazz trombonist in the United States was Jack Lund. And I didn't, other than I knew he played, he never said anything about it. So I finally asked him, I said, what's this about? Well, you know, they get carried away with that kind of stuff. I said, no, I want to know what's this about. And it turns out that Jack, his real love and his real profession was music. And prior to becoming a lawyer, he had been a trombonist, and he'd been in Harry James' band, in Tommy Dorsey's band, in Glenn Miller's band. For those of you, I don't know who those people are, but for those of you. And I was just fascinated. And then he started to tell me about playing for Judy Garland and playing for Sammy Davis. And I said, what are you doing? Not only in Lake County, Indiana, but our office was in Gary. What are you doing in Gary, Indiana? He said, I couldn't live that life, that nomadic life. It was killing me. You couldn't put down roots. You were traveling all the time. And law sounded like it'd be fun. And he became old. And he threw himself into that, just like he threw himself into his music. But I can tell you, and what a lot of people don't know about Jack, is he was generous to a fault. He was an incredibly generous partner. He gave of his time and money more to causes than I thought was realistic at the time. But he strongly and firmly believed in the cause that he was supporting. He never had a client that he didn't 150% believe was telling the unvarnished truth. And those of you that practiced against him, I can't tell you how many calls I got in the almost 5 years, over 4 years we were partners, from colleagues in the profession that would say, can you talk to him? Can you tell him to get a little realistic about what's going on here? I said, yeah, you guys know what he's like, but I'll give it a try. And the other thing was, he was always ahead of his time. Before I knew anything about, and Randy, my partner, will tell you I know nothing about technology. Before I knew anything about it, he had the most recent machine. He had the most recent phone. He had the most recent dictating machine. He had to be a step ahead. And we had electrical wires running all over our office, from one to the other to the other. I remember Joe Costello was an attorney from Porter County, and they had a case. They were doing a deposition, and Joe came over to our office one day. Jack wasn't there yet, and Joe, who knew that about Jack, and who was stepping over all this wiring, he looked at me and he said, "Hey, Jim." I said, "What, Joe?" He says, "Has he electrocuted himself yet?" But that's who Jack was. He just had to have the latest and the greatest and the best, because he was always thinking ahead. And that's just simply who he was. But I do want to say that I think it's important for those of us in the bar, especially in Jack's case. Jack's really known throughout the community, and Jack was really known throughout the country as a great musician, a phenomenal musician. We would go to Chicago, and we would go to Mr. Kelly's, I think it was. It's now Gibson's restaurant. And Ramsey Lewis would be playing, the great jazz pianist. And Jack and I would go there, or we'd go there with our wives. And I remember the first time I was there, Ramsey Lewis had got done doing his first set, and he says to all the folks there, "We really have a treat tonight." He says, "Because we have the best trombonist in the country, and the best trombonist I've ever played with, and I'm hoping that he'll come up and join us, Jack Lund." Jack would go out to the car, where he always had his trombone in the trunk, come in and sit and play till 3 and 4 in the morning. And you just wouldn't know that, but that's who he was, and that's how passionate he was, and that's how he was in the law. And I had the occasion to memorialize him at his service several months ago, and met his daughter for the first time, who lives in Arizona. And the two of us were commenting on how, because she had written something, and I was watching her, in addition to something she had written, she was also writing at that time, and she's left-handed, and I'm left-handed, and I said, "Oh, lefty, it's interesting." And she said, Did Dad ever get on you about your writing? I said, "He never got off of me about my writing." Everything had to be perfect from his perspective. Everything had to be perfect. And Randy knows that now, because we battle on that all the time. We don't battle, but I made several suggestions, which, as I did with Jack, Randy rejects. And, but he was so precise, and his use of the English language was unbelievable. And he made me, I like to think, a really good legal writer. I mean, he really did. And that's what a mentor and that's what a partner is all about. And so I have all these great memories of Jack, both from his non-legal side and from his legal side. And I just leave you with the thought that, you know, in the final analysis, you heard from everybody here, whether it's from a relative or whether it's from a dear friend, isn't that what it's really all about in our lives, in the relationships? It's not just about who we were as a lawyer, it's who we are as a person. And in the totality, my knowing Jack, and we remained dear friends to the end. He would always send me an email, he would always send me an article. He was very amused by my involvement in politics, which he thought was foolish, and he did be right. But to the end, he'd always send me something that was always just what I needed to receive. And never did it have to do with practice of law. It had to do with our relationship as friends and as partners and just as persons. And that's who Jack was. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Well, that actually explains something to me. Because the committee that Jack asked me to sit on was with Chuck Enslin. And this would have been very early in the movies. And the only way that we were allowed to exchange the materials we were working on was on disk, using WordStar. So I had to go out and buy a computer just to communicate with Jack. And now I know why. Plus, after 40 years of practice, I've learned something. Finally, I've heard of a lawyer who saved the Playboy magazine because of the articles. The next individual that we're going to remember is somebody who was special to me on several levels, C.J. Smith. I actually, as a young deputy prosecuting attorney in the courtroom right next door, had occasion to try cases with C.J., who was acting as a defense attorney, and again, another lawyer for whom you could absolutely count on when he represented something to you. I also had the pleasure of knowing him through Crescio, which those of you who are Catholic may know is for lack of a better word, it's a weekend retreat. And CJ was involved in mine. I will always remember that about him. And, you know, sometimes when you pick up the papers and you read the obituaries and you see someone and it makes you sad, mostly sad. And there are also times when you open it up and you see a name and you audibly let out that and CJ was one of those people. And to remember CJ Price, past president of the Lake County Bar Association, for a couple of folks.
I'm honored to be here to say a few words in celebration of CJ's life. He was my friend, a surrogate father, a mentor, and at times my counselor and attorney who got me through situations emotionally whole, such as when he represented me in my divorce. CJ had one of those desks covered with a glass top. Under the top, I remember he had an Irish prayer. I can't remember all of it, but it had words to the effect, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Words CJ both lived by and accomplished. As chronicled in his obit, he was born in 1931, married to his wife Lee in 1957, and they had 5 children, Mary, Peter, Terry, Sarah, and Mike. His wife passed in 2009. He was a true family man
and family always came before work and making money. CJ was a red-headed Irish elf, as shown in his obit, and his sly smile and twinkling eyes. Thank you, CJ, for giving me the privilege to wear my Irish tie twice this year. At one time, CJ worked with the firm that included Donnisberger, Smith, and Tenasevich, both of which he outlived. I first met CJ when I clerked for Saul Ruman when I was in law school. Much of my work was done on Saturdays, and at that time, as Harold Abrahamson can attest, all the Hammond lawyers worked on Saturdays, at least till noon. And then they would often meet for lunch at various places, including the LaSalle Hotel and Grill. It is gone now. After law school, I served in service for 3.5 years and then did 2.5 years stint with first with Saul Ruman and then with Saxon Hess. During that time, I continued to be friends with and mentored by CJ. From him, I learned people skills and the service of people as part of the practice of law. After all, CJ was first and foremost a people's lawyer, not a book lawyer. I then teamed with Smith, Granick, and Smith, except Terry Smith was moving on, and I was moving in. Again, CJ outlived both Terry Smith and Tom Granick. Smith held his friends close. Tom Granick spent the last 7 or 9 years of his life in an assisted living facility. Tom really liked his library, but the assisted living place would have none of it and would not let him keep it. That did not stop CJ. Every week he would sneak him a bottle of vodka. We all need friends like that. One of the few things he bragged about was helping clients save a brown-story, 2-flat rental on Holman Avenue near Harrison Park. It had been ticketed for demolition. He used his legal skills to get it rescued and got it turned from an eyesore to a really nice, productive rental. That monument, unlike many of his friends, still lives today. CJ was actively involved in the Hammond Bar Association. At one point, he served as president. CJ encouraged me to get my feet wet in bar activities, and at the time, we had lunch meetings at many places, one of which was Camland Chinese Restaurant, which has been made infamous in The Christmas Story, where the family ate Christmas Day after the dogs ate the Christmas turkey. CJ outlived Camland. He eventually pushed me into the president of the Hammond Bar, where I served in 1985. I promptly became the last president of the Hammond Bar, and with the help of Angelo Buscio and James Holcomb and others, we were able to establish the Lake County Bar, which came to life in 1986. As I look back, I think CJ knew that if he got me the job, I would take it and run with it. He always looked at the LCBA as an advancement over the 21 city and ethnic bars that preceded it. One of CJ's favorite sayings was, "That's better than a sharp stick in the eye." He would often say this to a client when a PI case had a modest settlement, either because of poor liability or minor damage. He would point out to the client as he delivered the settlement check, "This is better than a sharp stick in the eye." CJ enjoyed Vegas and gambling. For a period in his life, he went there regularly. One of these regular trips was immediately after April 15th, when he would go with his friend and accountant, Joe Glotzbach. for a 3-day weekend comped by the casino. CJ outlived Joe. CJ enjoyed life and his annual fishing trips with the boys to Manitoba, Canada. He would leave for 10 or 14 days every spring, closer to summer because he was going to Manitoba, Canada for this fishing trip. When I read his obit, I was surprised to learn that he had been awarded the Sagamore Wabash, because I never saw it displayed on the walls along with golf plaques and other memorabilia. Turns out he received it in 2007, the year he retired from the practice. But, in true CJ style, he never mentioned it to me in the next 10 years. As a true Irishman, he also was awarded the Sons of Erin Shamrock Award in 2010. One of the last projects that I did with CJ was when I wrote him in to help with CJ with Belle Fine's campaign to be a state rep. I knew he'd be excellent in helping design campaign materials since he had a gift for coming up with words and phrases. Perhaps my favorite CJ story relates to his being a family man. We, when I was with him, had a client with a railroad injury that was going to settle for well into the 6 figures. We had a settlement conference scheduled for our office at 1:30 with the claimant adjuster, the big shot Chicago attorney, and the local attorney, Ed Mackay, also outlived by CJ. They called and said, "We're going to be late." They didn't arrive until about 3:30. Now, I'd worked the case up. CJ knew the case. It was his client, and he turned it over to me, and that's why we were going to meet jointly. We just started talking about the case, and at 4 o'clock I got up and said, "I'm sorry, gentlemen, I have to leave because I have to conduct a Little League practice." I left. I was extremely worried that CJ would skin me alive the next day because we were always looking for a case. But that was not the case. They came back, said, "How did it go?" I said, "Oh, we got it rescheduled." And then he went on to say, "It was great. I showed those attorneys that family and community were more important than money in a case." I actually think we sold it for a few dollars more than what we thought we were going to get. As I have noted, CJ outlived almost everyone I have mentioned today. Not only does that have me looking over my shoulder for the Grim Ripper, but it also proves that the good do not always die young. And as CJ would say, that's better than a sharp stick in the eye. The world, our community, are both better places because CJ spent 86 years on this earth with his family, friends, clients, and fellow attorneys. Rest in peace, my friend.
You can hear the emotion in the voices of their colleagues. You can hear the emotion in the family members. CJ was special. And I'm sorry for your loss. Now that you have all, rather than doing this at the beginning, as is sometimes the case, it would mean more now for us to do it. Now that you have heard something about each of our colleagues in the past. Would you all please rise and join me as we call the honorable? Glenn Commons, January 5, 2017. Richard Walter, January 23, 2017. William Clyde Jones, February 11, 2017. Donald L. Gray, February 16, 2017. Brent A. Turinga, March 27, 2017. Michael A. Cherry, June 11, 2017. John M. Lyons, July 8, 2017. James Holcomb, August 3, 2017. Skip Knapp, Jr., September 25, 2017. Jack Winston Lund, October 7, 2017. C. Jerome Smith, November 30, 2017. You will always be in our hearts and our minds. Please be seated. During the coming year, we will, of course, have others that will make a list such as this. When we talk about all the people that CJ survived as an Irishman, this gives me the opportunity to point out that's why we call the obituaries the Irish sports pages. See who wins the race. I wish you all the very best of health and ask you to remember all of our brothers and colleagues that we've lost this year, and may it please the court, I move that the record of these proceedings be made an official part of the circuit court record. I know that the transcript will be available for those who want a copy, and for those who wish a DVD, there is a sign-up sheet here on the table in front of you. I would like to thank you all on behalf of the Lake County Bar Association for coming here and joining us today on this sad but happy occasion as we rededicate ourselves to the practice and the memory of those we've lost. With that, Your Honor, I move we adjourn.
Before we conclude, thank you, Mr. Page. Before we conclude, the court will grant the motion to make this part of the court's record. I also want to thank all of you for your part in continuing this important tradition. I want to again thank the Lake County Bar Association for their efforts in making sure that those who are gone are not forgotten. The colleagues that we remembered today are surely honored by the words that have been spoken here about them. And so I also want to extend thanks to the speakers. It is not an easy thing to do to eulogize a friend or a family member. And we appreciate you sharing your memories with us. Finally, thank you to the Honorable T. Edward Page for serving as Master of Ceremonies today. This concludes the 2018 Honors and Necrology Ceremony. This matter will be in recess until the first Tuesday of 2019 at 9 a.m. We are adjourned.
All rise.